Well, we have a rare treat. Dr. Bob Heineman is almost always, I can't think of a time when he hasn't been, our Friday guest. But today I've invited him in on this Wednesday because there are a couple of things going on internationally that are very significant, and we need someone who's very significant to address these issues. So I tried to get all kinds of people all over. I wasn't able, so I said... No. So we've invited Dr. Robert Heineman in to our program today.
It's time for the Newsmaker Show on News Talk AM 1480 WLEA. Here's Kevin Torres.
Author of some note, and of course a lecturer and a professor and a book reviewer, I might add.
Oh, thank you, Kevin.
By the way, that book... I see is not on my desk. Did you send someone over?
I came over and picked it up, Kevin.
What time?
I'm not quite certain.
What day?
Today.
No,
yes,
not today.
Today? Maybe yesterday. No, I would have been... right, yesterday.
Yesterday.
Picked it up yesterday.
You personally did?
I personally, yes.
I was never informed.
Well, I slipped in and out through your security apparatus... and moved on with the book.
The reason I ask is because...
I checked your cash drawer, too, but there was
nothing there. I could have warned you about that. All right. Now, Bob.
Yes, Kevin.
I've invited you in because yesterday I had a professor from Cornell talking about the situation in Israel and other issues.
Mm-hmm.
But the situation in Israel and the way he saw it and the way you saw it, not quite the same. You see a great danger for Israel. I want you to tell me why.
Well, I think Israel simply doesn't have the resources to take on the increasingly well-armed and increasingly better organized opponents in the Middle East that they have to deal with. Although, for example, Egypt, I think they're going to be in better shape with regard to Egypt. I think they're in pretty good shape with regard to Jordan. But the ability of these radical Islamic groups to increasingly challenge established governments is a challenge directly to Israel. And it's interesting that Hamas is not all that eager to move toward some sort of ceasefire with Israel in this current exchange of rockets and such, because Hamas, I think, feels that the more they can keep Israel on the attack, the more problems Israel eventually is going to have. So I think that they have a serious danger here of extending themselves too far, and I think perhaps Netanyahu recognizes that. It's true we gave him, is it the Iron Dome or the...
which is working very well.
Well, and they're making adjustments on it and such. But I think President Obama has made it clear that we're not going to go much farther than that.
Has he done that?
I think
wasn't
in
aware.
A way, in terms of...
I mean, we know he doesn't like Israel.
Well, I don't
much
know
of
about...
a secret.
I wouldn't say that when we're not...
I would.
I don't know. But given his lack of support for all the other allies and leaders in the Middle East, there's no reason Israel is going to come out much better in that respect. So it seems to me they have to be very careful how far they push this. Now, tied to that, Kevin, is Secretary of State Kerry's negotiations in Iran over this whole nuclear production and the possession of possible nuclear weapons, which Iran does not have, but the whole effort is to sort of try to slow them down. And I think basically we're not so much concerned about whether Iran has nuclear weapons or not as we are in terms of trying to mollify Israel and say, look, we're trying to work on this. We're trying to slow this down. We've got sanctions against Iran, et cetera. We're basically on your side here trying to keep these guys under control.
But I don't think Israel's buying into that. They don't think that what we're doing, we, the United States, what we're doing is really adequate.
Right. They're really pushing us even further on that. But again, there's only so much we can do. And certainly we're not about to invade or attack Iran. And so I think Kerry's just trying to quiet the situation down there. And Iran, in a way, it's, I think, kind of playing along with it in the sense of saying, well, yes, we'd be willing to do this, we'd be willing to do that. So all this is, it's incredibly complicated. And you look at the military taking over Egypt, clearly now they're much more willing to work with Israel as opposed to the Islamic Brotherhood that they basically overthrew. Again, so much for the Arab Spring here. I mean, the Obama and Clinton's totally clueless as to what's going on there. But what's interesting is the Hamas had a lot of tunnels between Egypt and across the Gaza Strip there across Sinai into the Gaza Strip, and they were shipping a lot of foodstuffs and other things there. But
Egypt was?
From Egypt, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently shipping a lot of arms as well in there to give them rockets. And apparently Egypt has shut that down now.
Why would Egypt be giving Hamas weapons to fight Israel?
No, they're not. I don't think they were. I think the Hamas was just smuggling them in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let me make a statement I made yesterday with our guest. I don't think Hamas gives a hoot for the Palestinian people because they know perfectly well when they launch these rockets, which are very ineffective, that a lot of people are going to get killed, innocent civilians are going to be killed in the Israeli bombing.
Retaliation.
Yes.
So,
I mean, if we had a government that said, hey, we're going to sacrifice our people in order to make a political point, I wouldn't want a government like that.
Well, tied to your point, of course, the Israelis have dropped leaflets and warned people in areas, civilians, to get out. Mm-hmm. And Hamas has encouraged them, and perhaps even forced them, to stay on the tops of some of these buildings, etc., forcing the Israelis to kill
innocents,
civilians. Yeah, and a lot of these people, of course, are piling out of there as fast as they can. So, to put it mildly, it's a dysfunctional approach Hamas is taking there. But when you're dealing with these zealots and these fanatics, the deaths don't. Yeah, you're right.
No, they don't give a hoot. They don't give a hoot about their own people. Why did I know you can't answer this, but one does wonder why a Palestinian living in the Gaza Strip would vote for Hamas when Hamas doesn't give a hoot about them.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it's, again, the anti-Israeli feeling. But the thing you have to understand there for a while, and perhaps until recently again, Palestinians are very resilient, a very hardworking people, and they, in fact, were producing goods and setting up factories and things like that. So they had an economy of sorts going there. But what kind of shape that's in now, I have no idea.
Okay, now
you're certainly right, though. The Palestinians under Abbas there, they have very little use for Hamas.
I wouldn't if I were a Palestinian.
Well, and what's interesting is, of course, when they held elections, was it Bush or Obama?
Bush
was surprised that, goodness gracious, Hamas won.
Yeah, then he said, we don't recognize the government. Come on, make up your mind, guys.
Right.
Yeah,
that's the one thing about when you're talking about democracy. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be all that favorable to the United States.
We've had two very poor foreign policy administrations in a row. I know you're a Republican, but Bush
I am, yes.
blew it. And Obama...
I wouldn't say blew it.
Well, let me ask you this about
he did
Obama.
Make some mistakes.
I guess he did.
Yes.
Obama apparently believes what a lot of people believe. Get out of there. Get out of all these hot spots. Come back home, although he's not dealing with our issues here. Come back home. But that goes back to something that Richard Nixon said in the 90s. He said to Monica Crowley, I'm going to try to get her on the show because she She was, I don't know if it was personal secretary or what she was for Nixon in the last years of his life. Nixon said, we, the United States, must assume a world power role because otherwise there's a vacuum, and this is the kind of thing that happens in a vacuum. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's true, but it's clear you do not agree with that. And so the problem is...
I don't agree with
No,
that.
you clearly, anytime the United States has stepped forward in some of these areas, you immediately are criticizing us for sending in troops, acting aggressively in some of these areas.
Well, you don't have to send in troops all the time.
Not all the time, no, but you've
No.
got to have some clout behind the
Yeah.
positions you take.
Yeah.
And again, the Obama and there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think, either this past week or last week, where someone was talking about the Obama foreign policy. And first of all, to call it a foreign policy, it seems to me is a
Overstatement.
a misnomer to start with.
Yeah.
The idea that there's any policy here is really quite misleading. But this person was arguing that it gets right down into the 70s when Carter was president, and America's position in the world was just totally on the brink. You had all kinds of, the Russians were invading Afghanistan, and there were problems all over the world in terms of policy. Now, I would say it's a lot worse today, frankly.
Oh, much worse, yeah.
You got the Ukraine, you've got North Korea, you've got the Chinese, reasonably aggressive, not overly aggressive, but still very assertive in the Pacific. And then you got Somalia, you got Yemen, you got Iraq, Afghanistan, and now the Israelis and the Gaza Strip people banging away at each other. I mean, there's just nothing there. And the idea that somehow we have any kind of...
We don't.
We don't. And the problem is it's getting to the point where there's not much we can do. At one point in some of these areas, if we'd have moved in at the right time, we might well have sort of forestalled the whole thing fragmenting into the situation it is today. We haven't. We just
I'm willing to say that I could have been wrong about the United States coming home totally the way Obama has. He's cutting the Army. They're sending pink slips to guys on the front lines in Afghanistan.
Oh, are they?
Oh, yeah.
I know they're cutting the Army. I didn't realize.
They're sending pink slips to the guys in Afghanistan on the front line.
So you get a letter from home and it says...
You're done. You've been fired.
No, it's going to get kind of hard to get much incentive up to go out there and get your tail shot off.
No, I certainly wouldn't. Not for this guy.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, I want to talk about other issues that affect us, the U.S., that, frankly, this administration seems totally inept in dealing with it. We'll talk about that with Dr. Bob in just a moment. Here we are with Dr. Robert Heineman twice in 1 week. This Wednesday edition, I asked him to come in because there are some very pressing issues in the Middle East, and he had some insights which he had shared with me, and I wanted him to share them with the public. I don't like that word share. It's a liberal word, but and I'm not a liberal.
Something a little more aggressive and a little more definitive, right?
Yeah, I don't.
You don't want to engage in conversations with people. You want to kind of lay it out there.
There you go, baby. Now, Bob, you think there's a risk that Israel could overextend itself, and I think Israel is acting. They are acting honorably. They're not trying to kill civilians.
No, I think there's some merit in what you say. I think the thing that really concerns Netanyahu, and frankly concerns a lot of the Israelis, as well as probably the Palestinians. I don't have anything against the Palestinians there, but this idea of kidnapping children and killing them. Clearly, that's what set this whole thing off. And who's doing that? Netanyahu may have a pretty good idea who's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I would bet if Abbas has some idea about it, he's probably working with Netanyahu on this. Nobody wants to go down that road. But obviously, whoever did that can see that they have a really sensitive, vulnerable area in terms of the Israelis. And so I have no doubt that if they get another chance here, they're gonna continue. And this is something Netanyahu simply cannot tolerate, and nor could any political leader tolerate.
Nor could they tolerate rockets coming at them.
Well, but I understand that. But again, kidnapping children. You look at
Terrible.
Look at Nigeria, for example. Again, where this Islamic group has gone in and
Terrible.
kidnapped all these children. Although, as far as I can tell, they're not killing them, at least. But it's a very sensitive thing, and somehow you have to respond. And I'm thinking, knowing the Israelis, they probably have some idea who did this, and they may well have already dealt with those people. We just don't know. But it's very ugly. Yes.
Well, here's what our guest yesterday said from Cornell. He said, Hamas would like nothing better than for Israel to invade on the ground, which would immediately send sympathy signals, if you will, to the rest of the world. Look what they're doing to these poor Palestinians. And I think that would happen. It's happened in the past. Bibi must know that, and that's why he's hesitating to.
Well, he has sent in some ground troops.
Well, he hasn't invaded like he did before.
No, he's been very careful in that respect. Again, I don't know who your commentator was, but it's a question of how far the Israelis can commit. I mean, this Iron Dome that they have over Jerusalem and some of these other areas, once you get guys on the ground, there's no Iron Dome there. They're out there in the open and much more vulnerable.
Well, Dr. Heineman, I appreciate you coming in here twice.
Yes, Kevin.
In 1 week.
Yeah.
When you come back on Friday, let's talk a little bit about these poor kids, some of whom are drowning in the Rio Grande, and what, if anything, we can do about it with, let's be blunt about it, an inept administration.
Yeah, well, again, we can talk about it. I think we do see some movement here and there in terms of trying to deal with this, but whether there's a coordinated plan here, whether Obama's doing anything, it really is, it's a little scary, Kevin.
We need a president. We really do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a few ladies there waiting for the chance.
Yeah, but that lady up in Massachusetts, buddy, believe me, if you think Obama's bad,
Yeah, I see, though, that
she's to the left of Obama.
A lot of the Obama progressives are moving in behind her, though.
Oh, yes, absolutely. He reportedly is sending her assistance and urging her to run against Hillary. And you should get that book by Ed Klein. It's marvelous.
Oh, it's been obtained, it's been read, and I'll have further information.
You've already read it?
No, I haven't read it.
Oh, but your bride has.
Yes, she's returned from her worldwide travels, and
yes,
and has read
with some insights that we ought to have her come share with us. All right, there's that word again. All right, now stay tuned for more news and information. Chris Koff tomorrow speaking to us from St. Louis.
Wow.
And Dr. Heineman back in again on Friday here on the award-winning, it really has won awards, Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA.